at this stage, aye.
Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's Monday afternoon. I'm Paul John Dykes. The man to my right is Quinny. Some call him the mighty Quinn. And we're here to talk about Celtic for an hour. Quinny, never a dull moment in Scottish football, is there?
No, it's the story that keeps on going, isn't it? In so many ways. And you were getting me up to speed before we came on of some other kind of news that's kind of broke out. We've had a wee bit of news as well, maybe about our own manager kind of developing, cheaper release clauses in December and stuff like that. So, yeah, it feels like, although the game was Saturday night, it still kind of feels like the game was yesterday in a weird way because of the just being here on a Monday.
Exactly, and Saturday night as well. So it does feel a bit closer, doesn't it, than it would have done if it was an early kickoff. I do want to concentrate on the game because everything links in, Quinny, when it comes to the performance on the park, the future of Martin O'Neill, and like you say, some of the updates that have been filtering into the, I would say, credible news sources in relation to the potential for Nonce to be Celtic's next manager. For anyone who hasn't seen it, fun and games in Scottish football as Rangers have removed Chief Executive Patrick Stewart and Sporting Director Kevin Thelwell from their posts with immediate effect. Now, we don't generally talk about Rangers unless it affects us directly. Quinny, all I would say is in terms of making a decision and being bold, I think that our club has done that with our manager. It's done it with the fan base, but it hasn't done it with anyone at an executive or a boardroom level, has it?
Again, that's just the main thing I've got a bee in my bonnet about, or whatever is like, results matter, and failures matter. And thinking about Kevin Thelwell and Patrick Stewart, did that Thelwell not appoint his son like a month ago or something like that into some sort of job?
Who would do that? Who would make nepotism such a public display? Really?
Yeah. In terms of scouting and all that kind of stuff, for sure. And he spent £8 million on that guy Chermiti, and again, like a very questionable transfer in so many ways. Like the history of the player, the value of him. He signed him for Everton in the first place as well. So yeah, failures and misappropriate or misspending your transfer budgets. There should be consequences for these things, and I guess fair play to them for ripping the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, the big thing as well, Quinny, you're spot on in relation to failures and who pays for them. And this is a big thing, right? Because we will delve into transfers, who's not actually stepping up to the plate in relation to summer transfers, etc. A slight admission of failure, although it was in the pre-produced video by the likes of the CEO prior to the AGM. Deary me, we're drowning in acronyms right here, right? It's the CEO. We're going to get onto KT, GSP, CCV, and all the other stuff. God, right. We dedicated about 5 years to EBTs and CVAs and all this kind of stuff as well, right? Maybe I should just say exactly the full word. So we'll be talking about some of the transfers, because when any Scottish club shells out, let's say 10, 11 million quid, right? I mean, we've seen it with Engels. We've seen it with Adam Ida being 8.5 million to 9.5 million. It's the focus is unbelievable because it is quite an unusual thing for a Scottish club to do. And Celtic, of course, are two big signings. And I mean, I was looking at it today. Our two big signings in the summer, Quinny, please disagree with me if I'm wrong. Our two big signings were Tunetke and Balikwisha. And I was looking at the cost of both of these players. They are listed as undisclosed in many of the sources. But if you check on Transfermarkt, now you may like or dislike Transfermarkt as a site, but it is generally accurate when it comes to transfer figures. They have it in euros, but it comes out at just over £10 million spent on those two players. And I think that when we come to the point of talking about the St Mirren performance, both of those players are discussed because one of them didn't get a kick and one of them did, but didn't do so well. So let's go back to the St Mirren game then. Saturday nights, under the lights, all that kind of stuff. The one disappointing thing really was the performance, Quinny. I'm glad we got out of Dodge. We got the 3 points. The performance wasn't great though, was it?
No, it wasn't. The 3 points is the number one thing. And seeing Hearts eventually dropping points at Pittodrie the next day just put some extra value onto the actual result coming out of it as a victory, of course. But, this doesn't really change the situation. Hearts were never going to finish the season undefeated. They were never going to win every game, every weekend, so it still very much is, like the gap's closing and things are going in the right direction, etc. But the 3 points is really what it needs to all be about. When I was kind of talking about it in my analysis content, and we spoke about it on Saturday night, I'm sure as well as probably last week. But there's been, this game's happened 5 times already this year, and it's just a bit too symptomatic of, if maybe felt like in the past when Rodgers was still in the building, maybe too many chefs spoiling the broth kind of thing, and also in this interim period, maybe there's not really even a head chef, maybe there's, so it's all like 3 guys on the same level kind of doing a different role and kind of dovetailing together, which is, something. But the Falkirk game, the analysis I did on that got a lot of views and stuff like that. So anyone who's not seen it, I recommend you check it out. Martin Neal's first game in. But if you go back and even just watch the highlights of the game, literally every pass, every highlight, you'll see Celtic get the ball, and within 3 passes, we're taking a shot or we're in the box, every single time. And that was like a real part of enthusiasm I think we all got from that game was, like, wow, it was so different. The midfield were closer together. And, maybe some of the other games, Hampden, maybe you've had to play the game a little bit differently. But that game, yes, on Saturday night was crying out for that type of football. And with the subs we were making, the subs were very, very unusual in a good way, and there was some different ideas tried out. But it just felt like it was, there wasn't really a single vision. There wasn't really a single plan kind of carrying it out. The team just kind of got disjointed the more the subs happened. Nothing really, we put Dyson on it up front at halftime when Johnny Kenny comes off. We then put more attacking players on. We're taking off fullbacks. And there was never a stage of the game where you really felt like, oh, we are pushing them back into their box. We are firing shots away. We are really, screwing the nut here. It never really developed that way in the game. So it's just, again, borne a lot of frustrations out for fans. And right off the back of the AGM, it really does just highlight, like, yeah, the team's fine. We like a lot of the players or whatever, but it's not been managed well for the last couple of years. And the problems we're seeing in it now is, the symptoms of missed opportunities in the transfer window for the last 3 seasons over and over again.
No, without a doubt. And there's loads of analogies about repairing your house and all this kind of stuff. And then the ceiling caves in, Quinny. We're at that stage where we have been teetering for some time. And we have spoken quite a bit in relation to the damage of one transfer window affecting the next 5. So, if you bring in 3 or 4 players and it doesn't work, it's going to take you 5 transfer windows to sort that out. And I think I did go back to that coming from Gary Neville originally, but I got to say, I think there's a lot of sense in what he says there. I mean, you've just got to take, for example, the first Brendan Rodgers transfer window when he comes in, 9 guys come in. The only ones at the moment who are still in and around the squad are Yang and Bernardo, and they're not starters, kind of far from it. But the rest of them, there's still some of those guys hanging around as loanees out. Nawrocki is still a Celtic player, as is Palma and Home. It takes loads of transfer windows and several seasons to recover from a bad window. If you then, follow that up, and I would say under Brendan Rodgers, how many transfer windows did he have? Right, okay, so he had 5, didn't he, second time round. How many of those transfer windows would you say were good transfer windows? I would maybe say 2. I would maybe say I'm going to say the Ida, Engels and Trusty transfer window was a good window. I know a lot of people don't agree with that because of the cost of it. And I'm also going to say that the Kuhn and Ida transfer window was a good transfer window.
January, yeah.
Aye, I think so. So I think there's maybe 2 out of the 5, and that's simply not good enough, Quinny. And now it's up to the club to work out where the disconnect is. We try and join the dots as best as we can. And I don't think it's through bias that I would say that, Brendan Rodgers was up against it. He had a vision, didn't match the clubs. Why that happened is an hour-long episode in itself when we'd already known that the relationship didn't work first time round. However, he's gone now. And I've got major concerns about recruitment coming into January with a new manager potentially coming in December as well. I'm also going to bring in as much as I can in terms of the comments. So thanks everybody for joining us. We're about 1,400 strong live on the chat. I'm going to start off with So Folly. After the AGM, I'm totally finished with the board and the Desmonds. And it's clear they ain't going nowhere. I feel the same as Tony from 4 Tins. This will be my last season as long as these guys are at the club. Now, I'm bringing this up, Quinny, not because I'm going to say to Sofoli, that's shocking, you should never throw in the towel. I'm bringing this up because I've seen a lot of that type of comment on the socials, in the comments, in WhatsApp groups, from people who haven't missed games for several years as season ticket holders, and they are saying the only power I've got now is to say, I'm not giving you my money. Now, you know, when you watch those pre-prepared videos that were played at the AGM, and I know you have watched them, right? And it's almost like you've written your own questions. You've got someone to read them out to you. I think there's actually an angle where I'm pretty sure Michael Nicholson's reading a placard or a sandwich board, and then they just cut to the long shot with the two of them in. When that happens, Quinny, right, in relation to the CFO, Chris Mackay, who I didn't think covered himself in glory in the meeting. If fans rebel in such a way that they say, right, you're not getting my money, you know what the attitude's going to be? And this is based on the interview that I've seen on Celtic TV, as well as being in that meeting with the CFO a couple of months back. They're basically just going to blame the Celtic fans for a reduction in spend and a reduction in success. They will take absolutely no ownership of it themselves, Quinny. So let's say, I don't know, 20,000 Celtic season ticket holders don't renew in the summer. I'm just using a figure. And they will turn that round and say, oh, well, we don't have the spending capability to prepare for the Champions League. So it's on you as fans. And I know that's their attitude. And that's based on interviews that they've given, Quinny, and also being in the same room for a couple of hours with these guys where it's absolutely never an option for them to admit responsibility.
Yeah, it feels like everything that happened on Friday was really like the last vestige of any hope of maybe they are trying to do something a bit more ambitious, or maybe there is like, the potential for things to change in time, because like you say, I watched that AGM video and they say nothing every year. And this was the only year where they couldn't say nothing, and they kind of do. They just say, we acknowledge and we hurt like everyone else. And that's it. There's no, this was the strategy. We were close to getting it right. Something went against us, and like actual real, again, like the Celtic board, when it comes to like this kind of communication stuff, they really should look at Man City. Like their owners on YouTube once a year, and it's like a 2-part video, and it's like proper Q&A, and he'll say, he won't always like reveal sensitive information or anything like that, but they will say, they will tell you like, oh, it's really important that we gave this guy a contract. We tried to get this transfer target. We ended up going to Bayern Munich, and that meant we've got this guy. Maybe tell you some stuff, and it kind of keeps you in the loop. And again, I think they're just very much too in business mode. But the thing with the club and everything else around it, people, Celtic fans especially, right? But sports fans, football fans, people in general, will not show up for people that don't try to be the best that they can be. It really doesn't matter what you're talking about. If there's this reality and this acceptance of where we have been is the best it's going to be, in terms of invincible trebles and all that stuff, like that's probably peak if the management of the squad is just going to continue the way it is for not just decades, but centuries, as was quoted in the meeting on Friday, So if there's just the prospect of for the next decades and centuries that this is as good as it gets, then why are we going to stick around to watch the rest of the movie? Like, it's peaked, Like, why put energy, effort, emotion, time, money, any of this into something that will not move any further forward than where it's at now?
Yeah, and you know this, right? And I've said this many, many times, Quinny. I love Celtic, the club, right? And everything else that comes with that is merely passing through. So the board of directors are passing through, as is the management team and all the players. And Celtic is a constant, and the only constant alongside the club is the fan base. Now, I think that the board of directors have lost that somewhere along the line. Now, maybe that happens when you are controlled by billionaires and billionaires' sons. You are controlled by people who draw millions of pounds, if you want to look at bonuses over the last 20 years when you're looking at CEOs, millions of pounds from the football club. We never draw anything out of the football club, Quinny. Fans give to the club. The reason that we are so financially stable is due to the fan base, the tickets, the season tickets selling out season upon season, the merchandise sales, etc. The only reason the merchandise sales are as big as they are and you can do the big deals worldwide is because we have that global fan base. It's the fans, and it's always the fans. But somewhere along the line, they've lost sight of that, and they need to regain that balance. Now, I'm looking at Friday. We'll touch on it nearer the end of the show. We're going to get into some of the football stuff and the managerial stuff first. But I look at Friday, like you say, as another opportunity. I think to myself, right, that meeting that we had where you're sitting in a room, and I'd never been in the same room asking questions. I don't know if you went to the Don Mackay unveiling of Ange, but I look thinking back, it was Natasha who actually represented Acsom on that day. I've never been in the same room, to be able to ask questions of a CEO. I have been in the same airspace, but not like being able to hold them to task, Quinny. But, it was an opportunity. And then I see the AGM as an opportunity. It's an opportunity for Celtic to say, right, by the way, this has gone pretty far down the line. What's our strategy to pull it back in? We really need the fan base on board because they are the lifeblood of the football club. And they failed to do it. So I know that there's going to be differing opinions about conduct, etc. But what I will stick to is the fact that Peter Lawwell and Ross Desmond, and it's even bizarre that I don't mention the CEO in this, the chairman and a shareholder's son had pre-prepared speeches that they were going to read out anyway, Quinny. So it doesn't matter if the board of directors were cheered on. It wouldn't have mattered if we all did the huddle as they walked into the room. They were going to read that statement out anyway, and they were going to basically make it out as if we are subordinates. We are basically thugs and thieves and everything else that they threw at us. And I'm paraphrasing. I know that's not a direct quote, but the way they spoke down to the Celtic fan base, and that's what it was. It was Celtic fans that they were speaking about. And I know it wasn't the entire fan base, but they're speaking about Celtic fans in a derogatory way, in a demeaning way. And somewhere along the line, they feel that that's okay, Quinny. They have lost sight of what the fan base gives the club.
Yeah. And again, like whenever the annual statements came out and, the little video interviews that they do, like on the business sense of things, like if this was like their own startup business that they founded in 2001 or whatever, and got it to the point it's at now, it would be monumental. It would be fantastic. But the club is 137 years old at this point, and that's just the thing that's so lost on, I think, the people that are running the club at the moment. Is what separates Celtic isn't just like the fact that, like, oh, we've got all these fans because we win the Scottish League every year, or we win, so many titles out of however many. It's not that. It's the fact that it's generations of people have been fans of the club for 137 years, and it's something that's not just in the local area, but that passing down through generations has happened around the world. Scottish football isn't on, primetime TV in America and Australia and Japan and wherever else Celtic fans find themselves. They need to, work out how to watch it themselves. It's not as if Celtic are the Harlem Globetrotters or something like that, where they're on every TV screen around the world when they play. And again, it just feels like they're in this mentality of like Celtic started the day they showed up, and like this is, guys, you should be buzzing. Like this has only been going for 10 years, and look at all the stuff we've done.
Look what we've given you. This is the attitude, Quinny. You're spot on. They've inherited all this stuff. They've inherited the stability. They've inherited the stadium. They've inherited the season ticket. I think in terms of season on season, the season ticket sales are like 98% sold out every season, and then they tap into the waiting list. They didn't create any of that. They didn't create the demand. They didn't create the arena. None of that was created by the current incumbents.
But like I said, see, the thing with Friday is it felt like it was like the last kind of evaporation of, like, see when they announced that standing section, I wasn't really that close to like all this stuff the way I am now, but that kind of came out of left field when that got unveiled. And I thought, oh, that's a really cool thing Celtic are doing, and enhancing that kind of fan section, the Green Brigade and all the rest of it. And it's doing something else to kind of enhance the stadium, the club, the atmosphere. Fans have also been crying out for it, and somehow we've managed to like pilot it. I think it was the way it kind of went. We were like the first people in town to get it in the UK. And there's been little things like that could trick you into thinking, like, or maybe not trick you. Yeah, I'd say it's tricked me into thinking certainly, like, oh, maybe they are going to get this right eventually, but they're just going to be super slow to it. They're going to be super patient and really risk adverse. But the situation we've been in over the last 4 seasons is positions of strength and not been able to just do what's required to maintain like a really strong position to kick on a little bit. And it's been it's like, oh, like you said, the thing you said earlier about the transfer window, it maybe cost you 5 years to get over it. Economically, if you stretch yourself, it's probably quite true. But I think for Celtic, like, if we get a transfer window wrong in terms of we don't actually bring anyone in that makes the team better or really replaces anyone that's left, we can kind of fix that within a window because of how prudent we are in the transfer window. Like, we don't really spend that much money on individual players for the most part, and we do have a surplus of cash lying around, but I think the problem comes is when we aren't really looking after the conveyor belt properly. I had a video out on my channel a week ago or so. There'll be a winger one. Actually, something you said earlier kind of rang a wee bell on me for that one. It'll be out later today, where it kind of goes through like the movement of strikers and everyone else that's came out. And the striker department, if you're to look back at it since like from the season that will not be named to now, probably the main mistake that the club has made is let O leave, or maybe Giakoumakis leave when he did, because otherwise, like, the striker department has been great for 40, 50 goals a season, all the way up until kind of now. And, I'm not trying to, Captain Hindsight, Giakoumakis or O or anything like that, but the depth we had at quality at striker, the competition we had for places, when somebody got minutes, it was like a better bloody score, otherwise I'm not getting a minute next week. And when you look at how that's been handled with the wingers, I say the video I've got coming out for that will be later today. Like, the winger situation has been so poorly handled over those years, where we had a lovely peak situation with the likes of Jota and Abada and Maeda and whatever, and then it's slowly but surely the wheels have just kind of came off it because that kind of conveyor belt hasn't been looked after well enough. It's been, as long as we've got a good first line, the top line, the best line of the team, then we'll fill the back of the squad with whoever we can, and we'll see what comes of it.
That's really interesting, the conveyor belt, because I totally agree with that. And there is margin for error if you're getting quality additions in, Quinny. As you look at Ange Postecoglou's time at the club, there were errors in the transfer window. We expect that. But the margin absolutely dissipates if you're not getting the quality in. And this is the issue. And then when you're looking at a conveyor belt of talent, you also need to have that coming through the academy. And it's only now that we have realised 20 years down the line that the academy is not working. So I think that all of these things have all come to a head because of complacency. But also somewhere along the line, the club has absolutely lost sight of what it is to be a Celtic supporter. I mean, I'm pretty sure when you look at the Celtic fan base, if you were to look at the 54,000 season ticket holders, for example, Quinny, there will be really successful business people within that fan base. There will be a number of millionaires within that fan base. Yet It's almost as if they're just tarring everybody with the same brush and say, anti-establishment factions, etc., etc. Therefore, we're not going to be bullied into doing what you want us to do. Yous will behave. This kind of language, so inflammatory. But we will come back to it. There's a few other points I want to make, because whenever there's a situation, Quinny, and we all face them in life and in work and etc., you think to yourself, how can I resolve it? That's always the way I approach a situation. Not, how can I stop by a shell and get some fuel and chuck it onto the fire? How can I resolve this? Is how I would like to look at it. Let us know in the comment section what your thoughts are. We will be getting down to the nuts and bolts of the St Mirren performance, the upcoming game against Feyenoord, and of course the managerial situation as well. And I'm going to bring in River C3. Yesterday was like the first time Hearts created more XG than they scored goals. Their luck is going downhill, but that doesn't mean they're out of it. Bloom will see the numbers too and act upon them. Yes, he will. I mean, in terms of data, we've been talking about data for a long time. In fact, if you go back to the first appearances of Alan Morrison on Acsom, the show that we did called A Celtic State of Mind was probably about 8 years ago. So we've been talking about it since then. It's been in football for a long, long time, Quinny. And for the first time, I would suggest, for the first time, the club are actually putting it out there. So I listened to what the club are going to be doing. This is in the Michael Nicholson video, which I'm thinking is still on the Celtic YouTube at the moment. So is it not? Has it been removed?
I think so, yeah. When I looked at it, it was unlisted. Yeah, it wasn't public to view.
Oh, dearie me. Right, you will find it online. You'll find it on X, because that's where I've watched it. Michael Nicholson talks about data analysis and how that's going to form a part of our future. It's not just about recruitment. It's also about player development at all levels. And it's also about opposition analysis. So leading into a game, you can use data to tell you what you need to be aware of, basically going into a game. And I think that's critical, particularly in Europe as well. So this is something that we're now talking about, and it's almost as if we've just found this new toy. But by the time we find it, other people have so far advanced from us, Quinny, that we're playing catch up. I mean, I always use this: data isn't a magic wand, and you've got to know how to use it. Because if it was a magic wand, all the betting companies and gambling companies, where a lot of the data analysis systems originated, would win every time. They would win every time. And I know that Tony Bloom's obviously got a kind of backstory in the gambling industry, and they would always win. So it's not a fail-safe, but it's a brilliant tool. And I'm going to use it when I talk about the St Mirren game. I'm going to use it to say we've not been using this properly, right? So we're going to the St Mirren game, and I have been, I would say, a champion, actually, of Sebastian Tunekte. I like the style of player that he has been for Celtic. I think that what I said before the game the other night is that he's not found a level of consistency. But I was surprised, actually, when I looked at his very raw data. This is base level data in terms of minutes and assists and goals, Quinny. So we bring him in the summer, Sebastian Tunekte, 23 years of age, 6.4 million euro. And this season for Celtic, he's made 14 appearances, 1,012 minutes. When he's been fit, he's played. The other big signing that we brought in, who didn't feature against St Mirren, not even from the bench, he is behind Yang at the moment in the pecking order, is Michel-Ange Balikwisha, 24 years of age, so he's hitting that age profile, 5.2 million euros, 12 appearances, surprisingly, for Celtic, but only 317 minutes, so mainly utilised from the bench. Neither of these guys are trusted as a right winger, Quinny. Neither of them. And we both know they have played football on the right wing throughout their career, but none of them are trusted on the right wing. There's a knock-on effect to that as well. And the knock-on effect is you've got to play the best striker we currently have on the right wing, which is Daizen Maeda, because obviously there are other people unfit. Osmond and Iheanacho have done pretty well this season, but Maeda's your number one striker and he's playing right wing. And because he's playing right wing, the backup striker, Johnny Kenny's playing through the middle. And if he's not having a good night, you're kind of goosed. So you've got an underperforming Maeda on the right wing. You've got Tunekte, and I'm going to give you his stats in a wee second, on the left, and Kenny through the middle. And when you look at that not working, and I don't think it is working, we'll get back to the midfield in a minute, that you're going to have nights like we had on Saturday night, Quinny. So between Balikwisha and Tunekte, you have 1,300 minutes between them, all right? 1,300 minutes, you've got 26 appearances. And between them, for your £10.2 million, you've got 2 goals and 2 assists. That's a major issue. In recruitment, it's a major issue in performance. And when you come up against a rigid St Mirren side, we know how Stevie Robinson plays his football. We've seen enough of his teams, Quinny. You are going to be nullified. And I just thought, honestly, we had no bite whatsoever, no edge up top on Saturday night. That's a major concern at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, big time. I think the left wing, particularly under Rodgers, we've seen it a lot on Saturday night against St Mirren. When Balikwisha's played, even in a lot of games Tunekte's played, he's played a lot more, obviously. And whenever Yang's been out on the, we are really hanging these guys out all by themselves, onto one side of the pitch. And Tierney's been good in spells. Obviously, he's the national hero right now. But the impact that Sriracha really does have on the team is that he kind of beefs out that left-hand side. So if we do send the ball in at Tunekte, he's got, a midfielder shouldn't be too far away, right? But regardless of where the midfield is, the left back should be there to help him out in some way. And with I'm not trying to put anything against Tierney if we had a good game overall, but him and Ralston weren't really full backing, and the right-hand side we basically gave up on anyway, and we kind of crunched Dyson in behind Kenny's shadow and went just down the left the whole time. So I think with Tunekte, like I kind of said when we signed him, I'm never going to reference his transfer fee other than if we're talking about transfer stuff, but because by all accounts, we know we paid way over the odds to make a transfer happen. If those guys didn't show up with a signing that day, it would have been sharks out time, because if it's a transfer window and we were missing out on Dahlbergs and Ida was gone, Yang's in Birmingham, and what's happening with, and everything was going haywire, if you remember. But I think like these, wingers like this, like Tuneke, I see the chat's referencing Palma. Jota was in the same category. So was Nicholas Kuhn. We've also been using some sort of data. The hit rate isn't 100%. It's probably not. Kuhn and Jota are the main winners, really, aren't they? Out of the whole batch, you could probably look at over the last 5 years. But they're all going to fail if they don't have players around them. Like I remember one game in particular that we were so focused on, right, Palma, now's the time to go for it. I forget if it was Dundee or Ross County, but we were playing somebody at home, and the whole first half, it was give the ball to Palma. And the whole first half, like, he just, bottled it, wet the bed, didn't get by anyone, didn't make anything happen. And I think he gets subbed at halftime. And Yang was playing on the other wing, started the game, and then the second half, it was the same thing. And it's kind of like what I said earlier, if you're not looking after that conveyor belt, then in a window like this, like Balikwisha really should be, like, he should be starting, because we let Palma go. Tilio wasn't the answer. Yang's not the answer. So the conveyor belt we've got is dried up. So when we come into this window, we can't go in buying more conveyor belt players. We need to buy a box ready, off the shelf item, which is probably meant to be Balikwisha, and it's not really working out for some reason. And and I think really, no matter what you're talking about, profile, price, anything, if you put them out there against 3 guys all game, they're all going to look rubbish and they're all going to do bad. So it's a wee bit symptom of the Rodgers football, and now maybe a symptom of there's no head chef again. It's just 3 guys running the team until the manager shows up.
When you rely so much on the wing play, and Celtic do, Quinny, like you say, if you look at the drop in quality from a position where we had the likes of Jota and Maeda that you could call on the left wing, you could look at the right wing and say, oh, we've got Abada and James DeForest is on the bench. And you're thinking, well, that's strong. I'm happy with that. And then you look at where we are now. You've got Balikwisha. I don't even know if he is a winger. I was looking at his games this morning, the positions that he's played in. And I know that he's played a lot of football on the left wing, but he doesn't look like a left or a right winger to me when he's played for Celtic, certainly. You've got Yang, people are in the gang and people are not in the gang, and people flip-flop in and out the gang. And he came on and he looked far more direct than Tuneke did. It was almost, there was a moment, actually going back to your Tierney point, there was a moment where Tierney overlapped him, didn't get the ball, so underlapped him, didn't get the ball, tried to overlap again, still didn't get it. And then Arnie Engels, there was a moment, and I know it wasn't a good night for him either, by the way, but he tried one of his searching passes, and it basically just went into space. And there was another moment where he's screaming at Tuneke second time, because he's like, I've already played the pass up there, and you never got it, and now you're not even making the run. And then he just turned and played it somewhere else. So it's so frustrating to watch, because, wing play has been something that was not a concern for a long time at Celtic, and now it's a major concern. And I think that with regards to players like Yang, who had one foot out the door already, it's going to be difficult for them to click back into, right, I'm going to do my best for Celtic now. They guys, going into talking about transfers, guys like Yang, right, and I would say obviously Maeda, we all know the story about Maeda, and potentially Hatate, because he was used in the same breath by Brendan Rodgers. They might still be looking at January for a way out, Quinny, when we're already really on the bare bones of a squad. Big part of that's injuries. I get it. We've got half a dozen guys out, many of whom would start at the moment. We can't actually afford to let these guys go. And we've been here before when it's unhappy players and you keep them. So that's a major issue as well that we've not really been focusing on. That cycle might only go to January and the guys want out again. So when we talk about transfers and the necessity for a no margin for error transfer window in January, which is very, very rare, because even that brilliant January transfer that Ange had, Ideguchi was part of it. So it was a 75% transfer window. Maeda, Hatate and O'Reilly were brilliant, but one guy wasn't. So you're not going to get them all right. And I'm looking at the impact of the summer window. So here we go, right? So injured. So we can't really hold this against them. Sirachi, Iheanacho and Osmond have been injured. I think all 3 of them might turn out to be good signings for Celtic, but they're currently unavailable. Yeah. Guys that are benched at the moment, Nygren, Balikwisha and Yamada. Nygren, I think, has shown some qualities, but he's not starting at the moment. So whether or not you would say cast iron, success, failure, or you're on the fence, I don't know. Nowhere to be seen, Simpson, Pusey and Inamura. They guys are off the radar. And 2 players are starting, and it's KT and Tuneke. So 10 players come in, And at the moment, 3 of them are injured from that lot. Even if you were to include the 3 injured players and the 2 starters, that's a 50% hit rate. So if we go into January, Quinny, and don't even get as good as a 50% hit rate, I mean, how many players are we going to sign in January? Because it's very unusual to sign half a dozen, isn't it? For 3 of them to work.
Especially in the January window. And again, this is something I was kind of chatting about. I think it was here maybe last week or the week before, that Nancy will give us, because MLS is end of season. So if you did want to try and get a little batch of guys signed in January, the MLS is quite fertile for doing that in January because it's end of season, etc. I kind of see it like, I really hope that we spend money in January, and I really hope we bring in some recruits, but I don't think it's going to be volume. It can't be volume this time. Let's say, I don't think we've got room for conveyor belt players anymore. We've only got room for, maybe we're not buying, off the shelf, box ready players for the most part, but as close to that is within our grasp. And again, one of the things, again, I try and highlight when we're chatting about the failings of the club and why it's like an issue or whatever. The whole summer we were trying to recruit players, and there was some mad soft budget of 3.5 million that we all kind of could feel, and then kind of got confirmed later on. And the players we were going after were pretty decent for the most part. Guys like Jacob Bream and 1 or 2 others. And the club at this point, like, if it's the guy, the best guy that's available, that's within our price range, we wanted to spend 3.5, pay 5. Like the January window, same attitude, but it was with Taneke, where we basically just shoved money into Hammarby's face and said, "Geez, your player, we're taking him because the Sharks are coming out if we don't sign somebody today." We need to have that kind of approach to, this is the best guy that we could sign, and making it happen, rather than settling for second, third, fourth options. And you've got to hope that the moves happen quickly in January as well, bedding in process to get the most out of them for the year ahead and everything as well. So, like, I don't know. I'm quite conflicted with what I think will happen in January, what I want to happen. I think I know what I want, but yeah, I heard somebody say we need 7 players. Like, that's probably quite right, to be honest with you. We've made 15 million this season in transfer fees, never mind Frimpong money and whatever else on top of it. It's hard to imagine we don't spend, but yeah, I just can't see 6 guys showing up. I could see like 2 or 3.
This is it, and I wouldn't disagree that we need that in terms of squad.
Especially if folk leave, like you mentioned. If Tate and or
Absolutely.
Maeda leave, then extra pressure on more faces,
Absolutely. And then, of course, with regards to whether or not you're confident that we'll get the recruitment right, I think the examples of that I'm using today is Taneke and Balaquisha cost a combined £10.2 million. Okay, so you bring in 2 guys for the same price, and you may not get what you think you're buying. I mean, 2 goals and 2 assists, and we're struggling for goals at the moment. So let's talk a wee bit about the performance then, because again, bit lifeless performance at half time. You're thinking, right, we're going to have to start hooking players at half time here to try and get a wee bit of momentum. We get the win, and after the game, you joined us, Quinny. I'm never complaining about getting a win. I'm never complaining about getting a last-minute win. Absolutely, especially when the goal is as good as it was. But then the aftermath of that is on Sunday, you start thinking about the game. Then you start preparing for Monday's bullet, and you go, wow, we cannot ignore the poor performance. What do you think it is? Because it's one thing to say that we've lost a lot of quality, and we have, and not replaced it. But we should still be able to perform better, Quinny, with the squad that we've got. The performance was really poor. I've singled out the front line, the front 3. Yeah, no bite whatsoever, nothing. We're getting nothing from them. Yeah. But I also felt as though we were let down by the midfield. And that was a position, since Martin O'Neill came in, that I thought was on an upward trajectory. Very, very poor, other than Callum McGregor and, of course, his winning goal. Why is it, do you think?
I think the midfield failed on the weekend because we played Hatate, McGregor and Engels. And again, they were just too far apart across the pitch. And although, like we've seen with Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney, there's been a wee bit of a tweak into the midfield where, like, we've seen Negren and even Hatate started the last game before the international break. We're being much more attacking midfielders, like being Johnny Kenny's shadow, would be right up there with the striker.
Aye.
When Hatate done it, but it was McGregor and McCowan behind him. And I don't know what it is, but I think that combination of Engels, McGregor and Hatate, I think they can only play the way that they've been brainwashed to play over the last year. Like right now, I think it would take some serious training to like batter them into a new shape as a 3. Yeah. So I think the real mistake was playing Hatate. Because I think if you're going to play Engels, you go Negren, and you've got, he'll do that job right under the striker and play there. if you want to do Hatate, you probably want to play McKeown. So I don't know why, but when McKeown and McGregor were in there as a little kind of, double piston, double pivot kind of thing, Hatate looked great up there, supporting and playing some balls across. And Engels came off the bench and looked fantastic as well. So I can kind of see how they arrived at playing those three. But I think from what we've seen at the weekend, like, it's just a combination that I think domestically, in Europe, it might be different because it's just a different game state, different animal. But domestically, like, they just get too far away from each other, and then again, they're just asking for too much. Hatate had some nice moments in this game, but the nice moments was like switching it to Ralston across the pitch or flicking over some guy's head in a no-one zone, going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you need that guy to be running beyond the striker. You need that guy feeding the front line. And when nobody's doing that, the front three are so far apart, the midfield are so far apart. We mentioned the fullback kind of thing already. If no one's going up and helping, we're just hanging everyone out to dry.
There is definitely something to be said in relation to a midfield three where it's been drummed into them. This is how you're playing for the last 18 months, Quinny. This is how you're playing. And then it's about, breaking that trend. And at the moment, I think the best way of breaking it is by splitting up the three and bringing in somebody else. I didn't think McKeown had a great game on Saturday night, but I do think that was the right move at the time because he's a player that, we've seen it in the other corresponding fixture opening day of the season. Did we watch that together? We certainly, you went up to it, but we did start the day off together, didn't we? Bar as that in design. It was a sunny day and Callum McGregor scores a goal and it's chopped off and McKeown is the absolute hero. So I do think that there's a place for him in the squad. I think Nygren has blown hot and cold. That he's shown some really, really good aspects of his game. And by the way, no one has scored and assisted more than Nygren this season. So you know that he's going to come in and perhaps create a chance for you. So McKeown and Nygren are chance creators or goal scorers. I can see why they came in. Engels, honestly, my radar, my whatever the version of a brain dometer is with Engels, it's just going up and down. You see a performance and you think, against Rangers, I thought he was brilliant. He played a game in Europe this season as well, where I thought, you know what, he's proved a lot of doubt was wrong here. And then he has a game like that where it's just like nothing. Absolutely just a nothing game. You're wondering what his role is. So inconsistent. There's no middle ground. He's either very, very good or really poor. He can't get into that 6 or 7 category every week, can he?
Yeah, I do kind of feel for him in that way because I do think, like, he's been kind of brought in to be the heir to the throne of to fit a mold that he doesn't fit in the whole Matt O'Reilly kind of spectre, and the way the teams can, it's not really been optimized. Alan Morrison's been one of the best for highlighting, like, whoever profiled Engels didn't really profile him well against like our general situation. So I think he's been kind of a wee bit a victim of being cast in the wrong movie a little bit in some ways. His quality shows up at the right times, but I think, as I say, it's at the point now with the midfield where the combinations probably need to be more delicately considered. When McKeown came on at halftime, I did really hope that it was going to be like a 4 midfield and just like box it in or diamond it up or something, because like I say, the Falkirk game, the good moments of this interim regime, Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney, is the midfield have played together. They've been close by. And yeah, if you do want Hatate all the way over there, maybe you want Engels over here, well, dropping McKeown into the mix with McGregor to maybe connect it all together might have been a solution, but that's not really the way it happened. Obviously, McKeown basically stayed wide and was pretty ineffectual, wasn't he, as you mentioned? But with Engels, he's not a match winner in himself. He's not a guy that is going to dictate the ball, but he's a very good team player, but the team need to be, as I say, like, again, just a bit more coherent. He needs to know what balls he's looking for, what wings he's trying to open up. And again, I think just with the change in tide and everything else as well, he can get very easily just lost in a game, can't he? Where it doesn't really impact it at all.
Doesn't contribute to it. I'm going to bring in some more of these comments before we move on to the Blessed Martin. He's still the Blessed Martin in Acsom Towers, that's for sure. Simon Fideni, in you come. Not advocating for it, but what level of failure would get board members the sack this season? See the problem, Simon, is they would blame us. They would blame us. They would blame Brendan. This is the issue. So, what level of failure would be required for them to get emptied? I don't think they would get emptied. I made a point last week in relation to the very first CEO at Celtic Football Club being Terry Cassidy. And as I said, he didn't divide opinion. Nobody wanted him at the club. Nobody liked him, right? Even the guys that worked with him didn't like him, right? He was a very, very, not even Marmite. Some people like Marmite, as I say. And Terry Cassidy, and it wasn't because he had to, like an AGM. Terry Cassidy attended a rally with Celtic fans, 300 Celtic fans, and one of whom was Jim Moore, who helped organise the rally as part of Save Ourselves. And he sat on that stage, and he got a hard time. He got a hard time on that stage, Quinny. For anyone who's not seen it, it's part 3 of our Saving Ourselves series on the YouTube channel. Go and watch it, right? Because what you get is somebody who's walking into a room, universally disliked, right? Celtic are in a bad place. This is 1991, December. We're in a bad place at that point. We don't have a plan on how we're going to be able to put seats in the stadium or build a new stadium. And time is running out as a result of the regulations following the Taylor inquiry. So he walks into this room. It wasn't a baying mob, nothing like it. Very well behaved Celtic fans, 300 of them. And he handled it and he managed it. And he wasn't demeaning. A couple of his jokes didn't land very well, Quinny, but he wasn't demeaning to the Celtic fan base. And he thanked the Celtic fans at the end of the rally for them allowing him to be there in attendance and take questions. He answered every question. Right? And this is the thing, that when I look at where we are now, the level of connection or dysfunction, disconnect between the board and the fans is wider. Now, I've seen a lot of people say, don't be daft, the Kellys and the Whites and all this. It's wider now. They don't even want to look at us. They don't want to look the path we walk. They just want us to continue to turn up and shut up and behave as well. Tony McCann, what failures are they admitting to? Useless without that context. Tony, I've got it written down here. I'd love to know how we could expand on that, because he said it. The CEO, Michael Nicholson, said, oh, we've made mistakes. Right. What mistakes? Right. What are the mistakes you've made? What are you going to do in relation to making sure that doesn't happen again? And who are you dealing with in terms of those mistakes? Because this is employment here. And if you make mistakes that cost the football club millions or tens of millions of pounds, Quinny, someone's head's got to roll. It's as simple as that. And I agree with Tony. We don't know what mistakes they're admitting to. We actually don't know, because they've never expanded on that. So you need a tough follow-up question that you're not going to get from a club employee, because he's reading from a script that's been handed to him. Yeah. I'm not going to have I know that he divides opinion. I'm not going to have a go at Jerry McCulloch. He's employed by a football club, and he's handed a script, and he's told to ask the questions. Even if he was to have a really tough follow-up, it'd get edited out. It would get edited out. He's part of that clique. He's part of the club. So, yeah, I would love to know, Tony, and I would love to ask him, what would happen, Quinny? I'm just thinking.
You should definitely invite someone on your show on a Friday. You should definitely reach out to one of them and say, set the record straight, sit down with me, and we'll get to the bottom of this.
Oh, box office. Because I was just going to say, thinking out loud, when I was talking about this and trying to be as balanced as I can in relation to thinking about the situation and the position that Jerry McCulloch was in, going into that, right? He's at his work and he's being told by his superiors, this is what's happening. And it's not one of the ones, I'm only doing my job. It's not like he's sending people into us. It's a media job that he's doing.
It's a public facing.
And there is an agenda, let's be honest, right? And it will always exist in club media, Quinny, which is why fan media exists. It's why fanzines existed. There will always be that Pravda propaganda element to it. But what I was thinking about there before you made your suggestion, Quinny, is we've obviously got a big fan media WhatsApp group, right? Fun and games in there, by the way, guys. Imagine making that public. It would be funny at times. Over 50. It just shows you, again, though, the depth of quality and quantity of Celtic fan media, fan-generated content. It's quite incredible. I was down south last week. I've mentioned it a few times. I was down south in a room full of content creators, and I've got to say, Quinny, and you've got your finger on the pulse with this. Celtic as a fan base, I don't know if it's unmatched, but it's up there when it comes to the level and the quality and the standard of production that fans put out there into the ether. And imagine the fan media group that we've got, 50 odd people in it, probably 40 platforms maybe, and bloggers and vloggers and all the rest of it. Imagine we says to the club, all right, we want something similar to what Don Mackay gave us. Let's have a Q&A. Let's invite all the fan media along. Give us the opportunity to record this. Let's get some honesty. Let's get some communication. Do you think, like, honestly, Quinny, do you think they would be like, wait a minute, this might actually curry a bit of favour, let's do it? Or do you just think it would be, I'm not even answering your query?
We're all meant to be in the same team, is what is screaming out in my head right now. And it does feel like they don't feel that way. So if they don't feel that way and recognise that's kind of what we need to get back to here, is all being on the same side of this, all being on the same side of the fence, then it should be like, yeah, you maybe need to take a big inhale, sharp inhale of breath before you go to do it, or you accept it. It's probably not going to be totally fun, like you mentioned, with your boy Casty getting kind of echoed or whatever at the thing. But I don't see why they wouldn't, because they clearly feel misunderstood in so many ways, but they go no distance to try and shed any light on anything, And again, like, people are saying like they've just lied to you or whatever, fair enough. But like, I don't see how, like, because they seem to be very confused about the upset. They seem to be very bemused by it. They feel very misunderstood, and it's all very confusing to them. I know the 7 questions went out from the collective and that became a bit of a thing, but I think they need actual spoon fed. Like, have we changed this £3.5 million no sign off required situation? Yes or no? Have we got anything lined up for January yet? How, so an actual, like, direct, like, this is something, what's the situation with it? And not just, oh, we would have loved to got into the Champions League this season, but we didn't make it. And that's all there is about the state of the club and the current situation. And it's as if, like, this isolated thing is the straw that broke the camel's back. Last thing I'll kind of say on that, but is, again, kind of Hearts has been a subtext in this conversation today, and it kind of is just through the season. Tony Bloom isn't on loan. He's not going back to Brighton at the end of the season or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, this is only the beginning. They're not going away anytime soon. So they've caught up with spending like £1 million domestically. I wouldn't say they've caught up, right? Fully, but they're a contender in the division now, like, unmistakably, And fast forward them compounding that for 4 seasons. He said 10 seasons, the man himself. It'll be wild to see where they are. And see, when you're talking about what failures could have them sacked or whatever. Like, surely with all the money they've got, they look at Hearts, never mind Midgetlands and Bodos or whatever, but they look at that and go, Jesus, like, our money's not working hard enough for us. We are not actually getting every nickel and dime out of this that we should be. Why, where, how, who, and attack it. And it just feels like all the statements, it's like, oh, guys, we're doing all right, and the strategy's mainly worked, and we failed some stuff, but we move on, and who cares? That's
I know. And throwing, like you say, bad money at it, because you take the two, and I'm not just saying it's Tuneki and Balaquisa's fault here. I'm just saying they were the big, in terms of monetary value, the big signings in the summer. And they're not really cooking on gas. You take that £10 million and filter it through Tony Bloom's system. Wow, what are you going to get then? What could Hearts do with that £10 million? So we're not using it well enough. And like you say, Hearts are absolutely part of the discussion. I tuned into the game yesterday. I don't tend to do that. I'm so focused on Celtic, Quinny, that a Hearts versus Aberdeen Hearts game on a Sunday afternoon, I'd check the score. I would check the score. I'd keep an eye on the score. I watched that game. I was fully invested in making sure that I watched every kick of that ball, because I am looking at Hearts and thinking, I just want you to drop. Now, when Martin O'Neill comes in, I was looking at this. Hearts have the deficit in relation to Hearts, so that they drew 2 games against Dundee United and St Mirren, and then they've lost to Aberdeen. So 2 points, 2 points, 3 points, 7 dropped by the Jambos. Now, obviously, 3 of those we've not been able to make up because it's a game in hand, and we sit 4 behind. So if you're looking at what Martin O'Neill has done in terms of stability and all the rest of it, Midtjylland blotting the copybook, maybe a game too far for us. And then obviously the last minute goal that we scored against St Mirren, we've kind of been doing that. I say last minute, at 96th minute. We scored in the 92nd minute against Motherwell, Maida. We did it against Kilmarnock, 96th minute, Iheanacho, penalty kick, balls of steel. And we done it in the 87th minute in opening day against St Mirren, Luke McCowan. So we're going to have other days like that because we just don't have the quality at the moment to blow a lot of the teams away. But we have basically been brought back into the transfer race, the title race, by Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney. And they've also got us into a cup final. And I was watching the interview after the game, post-match yesterday and Saturday, because I'm looking at Martin and I'm thinking, wow, you've been through the ringer, haven't you? And you're now managing kind of game to game. We've heard this morning, and I'll give the credit, the source materials, PLZ, saying that the date that's been set for the new manager is the 1st of December, which would then give Martin 2 more games, and it's Feyenoord and Hibs. And then Nancy plus his backroom team will join Celtic. That is what's obviously been revealed today. There was a rumour circulating yesterday about Gary O'Neill, wasn't it? Former Bournemouth Wolves manager. Not sure what the source of that was. That was flying about online. But it does look as though the Nancy deal is going to happen and Martin O'Neill gets 2 more games. And this is because of the position we're in, Quinny. I'm actually, on the one hand, like we spoke about last Monday, quite excited that it might be part of a bigger plan where we're bringing in data analysis and we've got the talent spotter and we are actually taking this seriously and there's a vision. But I'm a bit concerned that, all that good work O'Neill's done, unifying big parts of the support, unifying the team, getting the results, cutting the deficit at the top, getting us into the cup final, and you bring somebody else new in, and they might think, I don't fancy you, and we're going to play a completely different style, and it's going to take us a while to get used to that. Do you share those concerns?
I don't have many concerns on Nancy's potential ability to get the team into his shape within a match or two. I would caveat that by saying I would believe that Nancy's first match is Dundee, his second match is Hearts, and then his third game is the final. Might be a wee bit wrong on the sequence there. So that's the only detail of the point I have a problem with. It's like the absolute timing of it. There is like no room for error. Like I know we're waiting on the 1st of December his release clause goes to like a couple of bottles of ginger or something like that. I'm thinking we'll be happy to pay it. Again, I don't know why, unless it's significant. This guy had to be here 2 weeks ago. Like, you know what I mean? Brendan Rodgers resigned a month ago. He's been out, his season ended 2-3, so penny pinching again. But if he comes in and he wins those first 3-4 games, whatever it actually extends into to being the final, then it'll be fine. But the number one thing is like the play, like we mentioned the Bengals before, the wrong guy in the wrong movie. If that Nancy comes in, he could maybe reinvigorate the likes of a Balakwisha. He can maybe get him into the team and playing very quickly. You might see Negren become a bit more comfortable maybe in the system. I could see those types of things happening. But whoever gets brought in January has to fit this system. If someone comes in January and is like, where the hell is this guy going to play? Then Jesus, man, pulling hair out your head is the least that we'll be doing, because this window has surely been the top of the priority list since the 2nd of September or the 31st of August or whatever it was. And Nancy Rodgers is a kind of late development and maybe some things need to be tweaked a little bit, but you can't just go on with, this is the guy Rodgers wanted in September, the striker, so we've got him in now or whatever it is. So I'm confident that Nancy will get us looking like a Nancy team within a couple of games, but it's just a couple of games we have when he starts are risky, so I would love to see him. Like, I'm sure he needs to move house and stuff, and we're waiting for the 1st of December. Last thing I'll say on it, but like, he has to be influencing training regimes now or something, like even if it's not match practice and preparation, but there has to be something that gives him a head start now. Because if he is going to be the guy, then like, what are we messing about for? He can pick up the phone to people. We can do video calls. We can do all sorts of stuff. He needs to get as much of a head start into actually arriving from the full-time whistle at Hibs as possible.
Without a doubt, just with one eye on those fixtures, you're quite right. So Feyenoord, obviously, on Thursday night. If you wish to join us at the legendary, I'm just going to use that word, Bad Fan Zone on Thursday night. If you want someone to watch the game with at 5:45, then come and watch it with Acsom. We'll have live entertainment, free pies, and you can get the crack as well. We've had some good afternoons and nights in there. haven't we, Quinny? Aye, they're always good nights. It's great to watch the game on the big screen as well. So you're all welcome to come along to that, but I would suggest that you go and book a seat, because sometimes they're sold out and you want to get a good seat. So go onto the Bad website and then just go to the booking, go on to Thursday night and book yourself a seat to come and watch Feyenoord versus Celtic. Now, after that, it's Hibs, obviously away from home as well on the Sunday, as 12 o'clock noon kickoff. And like you say, if we're talking about going into December with the new man in charge, his first game's at home against Dundee, his second game's at home against Hearts, his third game in actual fact before the League Cup final is another Europa League game. It's at home, it's Roma, and then you've got the Scottish League Cup final. So it's like you've got no room to breathe, Quinny, as a new manager. But that's Celtic, and if you want the Celtic job, you've got to basically suck that up. You've got to deal with that. Every game's a must-win game, and the mentality has to be absolutely finely tuned. Got to thank every single one of you. There was something the other day, and I meant to say it, but then sometimes the conversations take us in different directions. Somebody was talking about the last time we changed manager mid-season. Now, they didn't mean an interim comes in. So we know that obviously during the COVID season, Neil Lennon was relieved of his duties and John Kennedy took interim charge. That's happened a few times. Neil Lennon himself took interim charge from Tony Mowbray. But the last time a manager left the building and a new one came in, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to say 1993, Liam Brady leaves the club, Lou Macari comes in. I think it was 1993. So you can let me know in the comments if I'm right. Can you remember as far back as that, Quinny?
I was 5. I heard someone else say the same thing, so I'll say you're right.
Lou Macari. And
it's never happened in my memory, not in my living memory as it happened,
It is we're in unique times. I think that was the point that was being made.
John Barnes, and Kenny Dalglish interim to the end of the season, wasn't it? Or was Kenny was it Dr. Joe that came in for him? Or was he?
No, Kenny took over. And then
it was O'Neill.
And then it was after Kenny. And then Venglos, and then obviously. So what actually happened? No, sorry. My timeline's wrong. It was Wim Jansen, Joe Venglos, John Barnes, Martin O'Neill. But with regards to, because his was 99-2000, his one season, and then 2000, Martin O'Neill comes in. But it was Kenny that took over, because we watched the League Cup final recently against Aberdeen, the 2-0 game. And Kenny Dalglish was the manager. But when you watched the game, Tommy Burns was quite clearly the manager. And Kenny Dalglish was there, obviously seeing out his 1 year of his contract before making way. But yeah, it doesn't happen very often, but it's happening this season. We're bringing in a permanent manager to replace the departed Brendan Rodgers. 2,500 in, listen, I get it. There's frustrations afoot amongst the Celtic fan base. Quinny and I could sit for another hour easy and talk about it. And I'm just going to leave you with one thought. It comes from Thomas Davenport. Tommy Burns once said, Celtic are a people and a cause. We need to get the board of directors. Yeah, we need changes in the board, but we need them to understand and realise this is about the fans. It's not about them. It's not about, heated driveways, billionaires. And this is a big thing as well, and I could go on about this. Do Celtic need a billionaire? Do we need it? Because we're self-sufficient, Quinny. It's not like he is financing any of this. Right, we know that he paid into 3 different share issues dating back to 1995. The last one that he obviously purchased shares in was in 2006 when we were building Lennoxtown. He's not bought a share, he's not had we've not had a share issue since 2006. That's almost 20 years ago. So we are self-sufficient as a football club, right? And since 2006, 2 massive things have happened. Rangers went bust in 2012. Then we had COVID in 2020. We survived it. We're not going to go bust. This 1994 PTSD thing, we need to get over that. It ain't happening, right? We're stable and we're self-sufficient. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Before I get into a rant, I better just call time on today's show. It's absolutely brilliant to see everybody involved. Come along and see us on Thursday night. It's Feyenoord, it's Celtic, it's 5:45. It's an early kickoff, and it would be great to see you there. All that's left for me to say, Quinny, absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.